Joanne Pfleiderer is an interfaith minister and the founder of Wellsprings Ministries, which provides services for those seeking spiritual guidance in the everyday and special moments in their lives. Her practice includes spiritual guidance and communication to help clients release anxiety and pain, bring closure to losses, rebuild self-esteem, and develop positive life goals. She completed a 2-year ministry program at Fellowships of the Spirit in Lilydale, New York, and is assistant minister there. As a hypnoanalyst certified by the International Hypnosis Federation, she provides past life regression therapy and related services. For 30 years, she served as director of communications at Mathematica, supporting its mission of improving public well-being through creative dissemination initiatives using multimedia, data visualization, and stakeholder engagement. Joanne is also an active congregant and member of the worship team here at CUUC. Please help me welcome Joanne to the pulpit.
You can use the clicker correctly. That's the test here. Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Easter. I'm not really here to talk a lot about Easter, but rather about some of the pagan rituals and symbols that have been incorporated into the Christian celebration that brings us today to where we're handing out Easter baskets to children. So, does anybody know what the Easter Bunny gets for making a basket? 2 points, just like everybody else. All right. So let me see. There we go. I want to start out by talking a little bit about the Wheel of the Year, which I'm sure some of you are already familiar with, but it's kind of central to what I'm going to say today, because there are 8 Sabbats or religious festivals for pagans in the Wheel of the Year, and the wheel turns as we go from one to the other. 4 of these are solar festivals: the spring equinox, where we are in Ostara, the summer solstice, the fall equinox, and the winter solstice, of course. And the sun was really important to pagan people. It was the reason they could live. They could grow crops. They were afraid when the sun went away, at wintertime. And they built monuments like Stonehenge in England and Newgrange, which is a passage tomb in Ireland, to honor the return of the sun. So that's one of the key things that you'll see in the symbols we're talking about today. This is a little simpler view of the year. It shows the cross-quarter days as well, which were Imbolc on February 2nd, which is the beginning of spring in the pagan Wheel of the Year. Beltane on May 1st, or May Day, which is the start of the growing period of summer when the sun really comes back in full force. Lugnaza on August 1st is the start of the harvest. This is typically when animals were brought back in from the pastures, and the ones that wouldn't make it through the winter were slaughtered. And then Samhain on November 1st marks the end of the harvest and the return of the darkness. And for many pagans, this is the beginning of the new year. It's not January 1st, it's November 1st. So Ostara falls right smack dab in the heart of spring. Imbolc before it, marking the start. Beltane after it, marking the end of spring and the beginning of summer. So here we're looking at this beautiful Anglo-Saxon goddess Eostre, which is where the word Ostara comes from, and also the word Easter. I thought maybe that's where the word estrogen comes from too, but it doesn't. That has a Latin root. So her name signifies east, which is where the sun rises in the spring, the sun returns, and she stands for the awakening of the earth and what Dylan Thomas called the force that through the green fuse drives the flower, the buds and the blossoms of spring. She's also the goddess of birds and rabbits. You can see some of these symbols here in this illustration. And on the full moon, she shapeshifts into a hare. So you can see this white hare by her side in this illustration, but often you'll see her with a hare's head or hare's ears. And she stands for immortality, fertility, and abundance. And I wanted to point out some of the symbols you'll see throughout this presentation. She holds the sun in one hand, the full moon in another. You see the eggs in the basket on the top of her head, the dawn birds, and the reawakening of the earth, the greening of the earth. Here's another illustration of her. You see some of the same symbols here. How did she get connected to Easter? There are several different legends about this. One of the most popular is that she found a dying bird in the snow, and she, being skilled in the art of transfiguration, was able to revive it by turning it into a hare or a rabbit. A hare is just a larger version of a rabbit, by the way. But to honor that animal's original form as a bird, she gave it the power to lay eggs once a year on her festival day. And the hare could give away these eggs to those who were feasting in her honor. And the eggs were typically in baskets or birds' nests. So, in terms of how this all started, when it all started, there are conflicting opinions about it. We do know that it is an ancient, that it's based on ancient pagan festivals that took place across the country, across the world, in different cultures and at different times. You can see in the yellow bar here some of the other deities that are parts of the spring celebrations throughout history. There was a Christian historian named the Venerable Bede who first starts to write about Ostra and Ostara. And he writes that she was a Germanic goddess, and her festival was held on the full moon after the spring equinox, which is right around the time of Easter. So this is where you start to see these Christian and pagan things kind of coming together. Now, whether this is true or not, we don't know, because as I said, the research is conflicting and in some cases spotty. So we're going with this for now. But we do know that, these festivals and celebrations have taken place throughout history. So why did these things start to merge? Well, consider that Romans were pagans, and the Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity in about 312 of the Common Era. And he sort of declared that the resurrection was going to take precedence over these pagan festivals. But that was after he had a vision during a battle that he won of a cross. Supposedly, again, this is just one explanation. No one knows for sure. But, think about what Rome was like at the time in the Roman Empire. Christians had been persecuted for years. There were civil wars breaking out everywhere. He had quite a mess on his hands, and he had to do something to create a unified empire. So imposing Christianity was one way he went about it, but he had to get the pagans to cooperate. If you were a person living in the country worshiping a forest deity, that was going to be a challenge for Constantine. But one of the things that he did, and that people of the time in the Christian church did, was start to bring in these pagan symbols to have something that people could become familiar with as pagans and begin to understand what Christianity was all about. Oh, and he also ordered that Easter should always be celebrated on the first Sunday after the full moon and the vernal equinox. So that's where we get the date of Easter from, which, as you know, changes throughout the years. So one symbol of the time, which I'm sure you've seen before, is the Celtic cross, which has this circle superimposed over the Latin cross. And that Latin cross, of course, is a symbol of suffering and salvation, but to the Celts, the circle represented the sun. which, as we discussed, was of great importance to pagans. It was their life, the reason they could grow crops and feed their families. But to Christians, this could also represent the halo of Christ. To the pagans, it was the symbol of the Roman sun god Invictus. So you can see these things starting to blend here. Some people also think that the four arms of the cross represent the four directions or the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So linking these symbols with divinity and resurrection helped blend the festival of Ostara with the Christian celebration of Easter. This is a European robin and looks remarkably like these peeps we see in the store today. It's a dawn bird. It emerges at daybreak. And it's linked to Ostara because of that, because she is a goddess of the dawn. And these birds, again, they symbolize the return of the sun, the warmth of the season as winter ends. Summer is going to be coming soon. And it's a cycle that goes on and on. The sun, the moon, light and dark, life and death. In Christianity, of course, the bird symbols include the dove representing the Holy Spirit. And in some of the paintings of the Christ child, you'll see a European robin, which is a symbol of resurrection and redemption. So birds, again, a symbol of both the pagan and the Christian traditions. Eostre is also linked to the moon's phases, and the Saxons would present these buns to her priestesses during the spring festivals. The crosses and the sun wheels represented the four seasons: the new, the waxing, the full, and the waning moon. And they're, of course, a huge part of Easter today in the Christian faith. And they're one of the early precursors of festival breads like challahs and babkas and other things that we see throughout the year. Earlier in March, St. Joseph's Day was on March 19th, some of you may recall. And where Mark and I are from in Buffalo, that's a big holiday. People bake breads in the shape of things associated with St. Joseph: a cross, a lamb, a sheaf of wheat. So these festival breads are a large part of Christian celebrations, Catholic as well. The next thing, eggs, symbol of new life, of course, but they were frequently dyed crimson by the Celts and the Slavs to represent the life-giving blood of the mother, the menstrual blood, actually, and the vitality of the sun. And sometimes to nourish plants during the growing season, pagans would plant eggs along with seedlings to set an intention. As the plants grew, their hopes would come to fruition at the end of the year. For Christians, eggs were forbidden fruits during Lent. They were boiled for preservation, and then they could be eaten on Easter Sunday when the fast was over. Sometimes to distinguish the older ones from the newer ones, they would be dyed different colors. The shape of the egg is also associated with the stone that was used to seal Jesus's tomb, and the eggshell, cracking of the eggshell, is a symbol of his emergence from the tomb, life conquering death. There's also a legend that when Mary Magdalene went to the tomb on Easter Sunday to anoint Christ's body, she took a basket of hard-boiled eggs with her to share with the women who accompanied her. And when the risen Christ appeared, the eggs turned bright red. Now, is that true or not? No one knows, right? But the concept of new life being celebrated during the spring became associated with Jesus conquering death and being reborn at this time. So why is there an Easter basket? You know, pagans still celebrate spring and always will. You can see from some of these things we looked at today that the Christians co-opted a lot of the spring pagan celebrations and changed the focus to resurrection rather than the rites of spring. And they use these sacred symbols to convert the pagans and to bring them into the tent. The rabbit, of course, here is straight up pagan. As far as I can tell, there's no Christian historical association with rabbits. But I ask you, is this an Easter basket or an Ostara basket? Happy Easter, blessed Ostara.